South Sudan.
The US Congress is about to vote on an amendment to the Defense Appropriations Bill. It aims to stop the National Security Agency from collecting American phone records. That's the spy agency that was thrown into the spotlight by whistleblower Edward Snowden. Now, Richard Lugar is a former Republican senator from Indiana. He joins me now live from Washington, D.C. Very nice to have you on Al Jazeera, Mr. Lugar, and thank you for your time. Know how busy you are. It's an important vote and an important debate over a very controversial issue. I mean, what's your position on it?
My position is that the Patriot Act, and the section that is being discussed now, gives NSA very full authority in a sort of meta database. By that I mean they are able to know that phone calls have been placed, the large number of phone calls, the same sort of thing you would need for billing of phone calls. But they do not intrude into the interior of the call, that is, what is being said. However, the database does indicate a variety of things, including the sheer volume of calls in various areas. And the only time that that database would be invaded is if there is other intelligence that indicates a potential terrorist case and a specific telephone number. And at that point, there could be an attempt to find out what the traffic is into that particular number. I make all that point because there has been the impression that NSA is listening in to telephone conversations of private persons. Now, that is simply not true. It is not authorized, and United States law does not permit it. It is this database, this meta database that we're talking about, the numbers of calls as opposed to the specifics in any one call.
You seem very supportive. Sorry to interrupt, sir. You seem very supportive of it, as is the president. So yes, one can only assume that if the vote goes against the president, he's not going to be very pleased. And I presume there are going to be people in your party that are also not very pleased at this.
Well, as a matter of fact, the support for this comes from so-called libertarian Republicans and very liberal Democrats. There's a certain amount of bipartisan support. However, I believe a majority of members of the House will reject the amendment to the defense bill. Now, if they do not, then it remains in the defense bill. The defense bill may or may not pass. There will still need to be a conference with the Senate in which this particular amendment could be removed. The president could veto the whole situation. But it is an important debate and vote today, and everybody I know who is involved with the intelligence community and with national security points out over 50 terrorist attacks may have been prevented already by having this program, and that is very important, at least 12 in the United States. So it's important for our security, and that's why I'm solidly for the policy we now have.
In the light of what Edward Snowden did and said, sir, do you think that perhaps the government itself was perhaps slow off the mark in trying to explain itself, trying to limit the damage that's being caused by this, and explain exactly what you have just said to us on Al Jazeera, and clarified the situation about what is gathered and that calls are not listened into?
I think it's always important that our government be as explicit as possible in its reassurance and in its truthfulness. And I think it has been, but as you say, it may have been slower off the mark than should have been the case. I think there was always reticence on the part of people involved in intelligence to begin to discuss the whole business because many people, including most Americans, do not understand all of it. But this now has become a critical debate, and so we all need to know much more. And so do people around the world. There has been the thought that somehow or other telephone calls in other countries might have been invaded in this process, that people have been listening to actual conversations, which demonstrably is not true. So we ought to reassure other countries that we have not invaded their privacy.
Well, we'll certainly find out what happens with that vote later and with the debate. Thank you so much, Mr. Lugar, for joining us on Al Jazeera.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, here's the sport now with Andy.
Thank you very much. So, well, Barcelona's new coach, Gerardo Tata Martino, is expected to arrive at the Nou Camp on Thursday to finalise his 2-year deal. It'll come just a day after the Catalan club lost a friendly to European champions Bayern.